What's up, everybody? Welcome back. This is Metagame Episode 4. It is I, Tyler, your loving host, aka Tovarish Gaming, bringing you back to another lovely episode of Metagame. I, of course, do have with me my lovely guests, the Sambosti and John Anawan. I remembered your last name, by the way.
There you go.
John
AKA
Anawan.
Firewater.
AKA Firewater. Yep, we'll do Twitter accounts at the end, man. Don't.
It's all good.
This guy trying to get himself promoted. This guy. So we are here back again today. I have John on, of course. He's got 2 master's degrees in psychology, which is going to be a wonderful help with the particular conversation that we're going to be having today, which is about gaming communities. So we're going to be talking about how communities differ from genre to genre or even game to game, and kind of discuss why that happens, the influence that the communities have on their games of choice, and we're just going to kind of go from there, and we're going to figure it out. And if we have time at the end, if we don't quite take up the full hour, I do want to talk a little bit about pro gaming and how pro gaming is kind of like it's a separate entity of the gaming community, yet still a huge part of it. So, and how kind of like the pros interact with everyone else, and that trickle-down effect of when pros do something in a certain game, you know, you can see the meta of that kind of carry over into the casual style of play. But let's jump right in. So I wanna start by talking about a particular thing that I just learned about a few days ago, which is about this particular event that occurred in EVE Online 10 years after the game was released. So it was this huge war, right, between all these different factions in EVE that occurred.
Which one? Those happen a lot.
I don't know. I wish I knew. I don't know what it was called, but apparently it was like a really huge deal. It had something to do with dark matter. I don't know. I've never played EVE. I don't know.
Wait, when did this happen? Was this like a few weeks ago?
I think so.
A few weeks ago, I read about this on the internet. I don't actually play EVE, so I'm going to get terms wrong for anyone who does play EVE. But one of those Titan class, the biggest class of warship, someone misclicked, and instead of opening a warp gate, they actually jumped through the warp gate, which means this ship worth thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in real money was suddenly in an unprotected area. And this group of people noticed it and decided to pounce on it. And then this alliance that had been formed a long time ago between like Reddit and I think Something Awful or something like that, or Goon Squad, something like that broke down because of this conflict, and that's when this whole war thingamajigger happened.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's the same one that I'm referring to, but
no way to know.
Right, no way to know. We don't play EVE, but it's super cool to me. And so the video that I was watching was talking about the benefits of a sandbox MMO compared to a theme park MMO. And for those viewers watching that don't know the difference, a theme park MMO can be something like World of Warcraft. It's where there are a set amount of things for a player to participate in, and the experience that the player has is while in an MMO you're still free to do whatever you want, right? You can go wherever you want, you can kind of do whatever quest you want, etc., etc. You're still bound by a particular path that the developer wants you to have. Whereas in a sandbox MMO, the developer just gives the player the tools and says, have fun, right? And content is created by the players. And it's this titillizing word or phrase called emergent gameplay that scares a lot of people, but you know, it's really important, and it's what creates something like what happened, or what I saw, you know, happen that was referenced about EVE. And you know, so there were a series of, you know, alliances or factions or whatever in the game that for whatever reason, whether it's what Sambosti talked about or if this was a different situation, that culminate, you know, things happen over time that culminate in this like huge space war, right? That the developer took no part in creating this event that happened. Excuse me. So it was really cool to see that, you know, these players get involved in this all-out war, and the fact that it takes such a hold outside of the game, right? Like, you know, they were going over the things that were a part of this event, and there was propaganda, right? Like on forums and on websites and stuff, there were propaganda ads, and there were recruitment ads and things like this and whatnot, and it very much appeared to be it occurred the same way that a real war happens in real life. And it was very cool to see how a game can allow players to create an environment in which things that are like this serious or on this magnitude, those things are able to happen, which I thought was really, really cool. And and then you see things like other MMO communities that are very well tied in, but from game to game, every community is very different. And we've talked on this show before about the League of Legends community, about the Dota community, about the Call of Duty community, about the World of Warcraft community, etc., etc. And it's really interesting to see how all of these communities differ and how all of them influence the games that they're a part of. So, I mean, do either of you have any particular examples that you wanna point out, or a particular direction?
I think what's important to recognize with the communities that you mentioned, right? And EVE is a sandbox game. They have about 500,000 subscribers, which is it's enough to keep the company afloat. I know that they were CCP was struggling financially at one point, and that's pretty cool that they can have that thing. But EVE players, from what I gather, and they're like a cool bunch of guys, but they love that laissez-faire type of gameplay. It takes a while to get into EVE, but once you get going, you get going.
Right.
So with EVE, I see that they kind of have that common bond because no other game really offers that right now. Like you said, what other sandbox MMOs are there? I'm not aware of any.
There mostly aren't, and it's because of what we talked about
EVE.
last episode with the WoW clone thing. It's that so many companies see this theme park MMO doing so well that they want to copy it. So it's hard for major companies to say oh well, we want to invest in something like a sandbox MMO when outside of EVE it hasn't really been successful.
And I think the uniqueness of the game keeps it kind of like 500,000 people sounds like a lot of people, but compared to like WoW and other games, League of Legends, Dota 2, really not that much. So I think the smaller the community is, the more tighter it becomes. When you mentioned World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, you didn't say Counter-Strike, but and all those other games, usually the larger the community, the more entropy that comes into it. So you think of it from a social psychology standpoint, right? It's, entropy is disorder to a ordered system. So the more people that flood a community, usually like people will seek out a game. They're pretty quality community members, like what we have in Firefall right now. There are very few bad eggs in the Firefall community right now. Would you agree, Sam Basti?
Sure.
Compared to other ones, right? I mean, we have our. I don't want to give anyone credibility. I'm not going to name names, but we could probably rattle off a few people that would be like, wow, if they left, that that wouldn't be the worst thing. But the larger the community, like League of Legends is huge. Dota 2 actually just surpassed League of Legends.
It didn't. That was
it's not true? Oh, I was lied to.
They took back their statement.
Oh, well then...
There's no way you beat League of Legends right now. It's just too big.
Yeah, I kind of saw that, but I was like, I'm kind of foolish sometimes, and I was like, oh, it's on the internet. It must be true.
They made that statement, and then Riot was like knocked on the door and was like, yeah, no. And then they were like, oh, yeah, no, my bad.
Either way, Dota 2 is still pretty large, right? Even
yeah.
if they're not beating out League of Legends, either way.
Yeah.
The larger the community, the more entropy you see. Like, I saw that in the Counter-Strike community back, many more years ago than I care to admit. I played CS in high school, and I played my freshman year in college. I was going to community college, so I still stayed home and had my internet access. I played CS 1.6, and that competitive community was about 10,000 teams deep in Cal. Assuming half of them are active, that's 5,000 teams. It's pretty large. And the way the Counter-Strike community was, it was pretty brutal. It was if you had a good game, you're cheating. If you had a bad game, you sucked. And if you had a mediocre game, you're a scrub. Those were the three options.
In general, right? Because everyone who's better than you is always a no-life loser, and anyone who's worse than you is a noob. There's only one individual in the world that strikes the perfect balance, and that's always yourself. I think that's just the gaming mindset. But I do want to expand on that thing you said about EVE, and I think we were talking about this sandbox community thing. I think EVE survives precisely because it is so unique. I actually tried a trial for EVE once. I don't know, it was a free 14-day pass or something like that. And that game is really hard to get into. I'm generally the kind who likes to get into really complex games, but at the point of EVE, I decided I can't spend my entire life working on EVE and getting good at it, right? because my philosophy for the past few years has been I used to play MMOs. They're too big of a time investment, so I try to avoid them now because it's like crack. You start and then you can't stop anymore, so don't start crack, right?
Electronic crack, right?
But what I'm actually saying is if you had two games that were like Eve, those you wouldn't suddenly have 1 million people playing games like Eve. You would have 250,000 in each game. You would just split those 500,000 among those two games. Because it takes a certain amount of commitment. You have to have a bunch of free time. You have to be willing to spend money, and you have to be willing to play in this high-risk, high-stakes, no-holds-barred gameplay, because Eve is brutal. You either survive or you die, right? Literally, the only way you can play for free, or the only way you can get ahead is off the backs of other players. Or, of course, if you're just the one who invested the most time. But in either case, that takes a hardcore MMO player, right? There is no casual Eve player, essentially. Or it's really hard to be one, and there are very few. I'm not going to make extreme statements like there are none. So what that means is that I think there's a reason those theme park MMOs exist so much. And that's something, that's just the nature of MMO gaming. I think this kind of goes to this kind of tangential point. Everyone always thinks a sandbox, not a theme park. A sandbox MMO is a great idea. Have you guys heard of Infinity Universe online game? So some guy is making a game that's a procedurally generated universe, right? Like gigantic. And it's basically going to be a future sandbox MMO, but he's really slow about it, so it's been going on since 2008. The point is, I was in that community for a while, and there was this big discussion going on over how easy it should be to kill somebody, and how easy PvP should be. And the funny thing about that discussion is, and this discussion happens all over the internet in every game, it's when people are imagining what it would be like if you could kill players anytime. They always imagine themselves killing another player, not themselves getting ganked, right?
Right.
So this applies to sandbox MMOs as well, because no one imagined themselves being the guy who's like a medium-level player at level 25 and gets his ass kicked. No, you can kill players anytime, so you're going to kill a bunch of players. So I think that's why sandbox MMOs sound very appealing, but in practice, very few people end up playing them.
And I think, to just piggyback off of that, if you remember, Sambasti, with Global Agenda, we were just talking about that pre-recording, there is a post that Hi-Res Studios made with a poll saying, with AVA, do you want it to be laissez-faire and no holds bar, you can attack anybody anytime, doesn't matter if they're ready or not, guess what, we're here. Or do you want it to be more balanced? Most of the community overwhelmingly said, no, laissez-faire, because my team's going to be boss, yo. My team's going to go in. Well, that was not the case. It turned out like 2 or 3 agencies wound up taking the whole friggin' map.
Well, yeah, you have to be on at 2 a.m., right? And
well, I mean, you wanted laissez-faire. This is what you wanted. You wanted no government interference. Well, here's what happens.
Everyone imagines themselves being on at 12 to steal somebody's hexes and, hey, we're going to win the map, and then some other guy's on at 2 a.m., and there's only one guy that's on at 2 a.m., and there's 20 people who are on at 12, so what are the odds, right?
So we're going to ghost cap hexes, right? No conflict. Just go in and just go through the map as a formality. So, yeah, that's kind of like the point there. And with the laissez-faire, that's what I'm concerned about with open-world PvP for Firefall. I think it's going to leave a lot of bad taste in a lot of people's mouths there. It's going to leave a bad taste because like you said, Sambasi, nobody's ever the ganked. They're always the ganker, right? I don't go down. What are you talking about? I'm Firewater, baby. Come on now. That's not how it works. And then I get smacked in that tournament, right? I'm out in the freaking 3rd round. So I think it's gonna leave some egos bruised, and it's gonna leave some hurt feelings there, just it did in Global Agenda.
I don't think you even have to worry about egos, right? Because most players aren't even at the point where like egos are a question. That's more of an esports thing. No, I mean like egos are more of an esports thing. Esports players have a lot of pride. Casual players, it's more like, hey, I'm not having fun anymore because I keep getting killed.
Some people like to run their mouths without the esports stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, like the running the mouths. What we're talking about is a community so large that mouth running and like public figures aren't even a question anymore. It's just you have 20,000 people, and of those, 500 people are going to be the top level PvPers who kill everybody. And
Correct.
The rest are going to be their farm.
Cough, meta, cough.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's that differential that makes EVE, like as a community, so unique. Because it's those players who are willing to take those risks and who are willing to accept that they're going to die and be farmed for other players.
So do you guys think that, like, let's look at the difference between a community like League of Legends and a community like Firefall. Okay, so League of Legends, 40 million players, almost. I mean, unless you're a tournament player, you have total anonymity when you're playing a game of League of Legends, compared to a game like Firefall, where bar the fact that it's like beta, and let's just look at it as a small community MMO for the purpose of this conversation. You have community members that people recognize, right? Like my friends list in Firefall consists of pretty much everyone who plays Firefall. So, do you think that the fact that people are abhorrent in a game like League of Legends and much less abhorrent in a game like Firefall, can you chalk that up just to anonymity, or is there more to that?
I think
Anonymity. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sam.
Go ahead. It's fine.
No, anonymity plus an audience is a recipe for disaster. If anyone ever read, I think it's Penny Arcade's Gabriel, Greater Internet Fuckwad Theory. You take you take your anonymity, you take your large audience, and you have yourself a fucking fucktard, because those people are not going to be. They're not accountable for their behavior. If they try to pull the same shit that they do in real life, they go to school and say the crap that they're spewing over League of Legends. No one's going to hang out with them. They could probably even get in some trouble, right? You say that at your job, you're going to get fired. But when no one can hold me accountable, guess what? When there's no accountability on the internet, everyone's 6'4", 220 with a six-pack and has a black belt and just like Neo in all martial arts, right, from The Matrix. He's got the best training in the world because no one can touch you. So that's really where that comes down to. And the more people you have with that anonymity, if I could use correct English, that's how you're going to increase your entropy, your disorder to a normal system. I'm sure there's plenty of League of Legends players that are good and decent people, but then you got your ragers, you got your people that blame Elo hell because they're making mistakes, but no, it's the other team. I went 15-0. We should win. It's like, well, no, your objective is to kill the Nexus, not to get 50 kills. Your job is to, so it's really I think it depends upon the type of the gameplay, because in League of Legends, let's take League of Legends versus Counter-Strike. I know they're two different genres. They're two different, completely different games. But they're both team-based games, but their core team values are different. So, for example, in League of Legends, if I want to go Ashe and I just want to run up the middle the entire time, and I'm going to get killed every single time, I don't care. I'm actually creating a slippery slope for my team. Whereas someone could get a kill streak off of me, they're going to get more gold and experience, they're going to be able to level up their champion faster, and they're going to be able to buy better equipment quicker. Now, in Counter-Strike, somebody could run off and die, that's fine. I think you get $300 a kill. But as an other Counter-Strike player, guess what? If all my 4 teammates die, I can ace the other team, and I can really go out and smack. So in a game like Counter-Strike, if we had a feeder, so to speak, it really made a little bit of a difference. Obviously, you don't want your teammate to be a scrub and not help your team, but in Counter-Strike, because of the TTK and the way it works, I have more control as an individual player, whereas League of Legends, you really don't. I'm not saying there aren't skilled players, it's that you're more handicapped by your team if they aren't as good, rather than in a game like a Counter-Strike.
Right.
So that's your turn now, I promise.
So I'm going to present a slightly different theory, and that's something I would call the forum line. Because when you think about it, all these well-known personalities in Firefall, right? I mean, ignoring the fact that you have a lot of friends and your friends appear to make up the entire community because the community is so small. When it comes to just having figures in the community and this anonymity question, in Firefall, in a game like Firefall, you can be well known because you post on the forums a lot, because you provide good feedback, because you're active in the community, right? And I've seen this in other games as well. I used to play an old game called Allegiance.
Yes.
You played that game?
Oh, man, yeah. I used to play on the Microsoft Zone, dude. Oh, that was the greatest space flight game ever created, dude.
I played it in, 2008 when the community was, at its
This is why I'm here, ladies and gentlemen, to bring gamers together.
Yo, Legion Interceptors, baby!
So, basically what happened is a really small part of the community kept the game alive through, up until, 2005, and then they started growing again. In 2007, they hit their peak around 1,000 active players every 7 days. But now it's declining again, so now it's 100. But the point was, it was a very small community the whole time, and you knew people because they posted on the forums a lot. That's how you became well known in the community. Once you get to a community the size of League of Legends, a forum, a standard internet forum, is no longer a viable means of communication. So you end up with systems like Reddit taking over, and Reddit is a lot more anonymous. You can't be a big community figure because you post on Reddit a lot, or at least I don't really think you can.
Unless you match your alias with your...
Yeah, exactly.
That's really the only way, yeah.
I guess the easiest way to define it would be profile pictures, right? Because that's how you remember people, by their profile pictures. And there's no profile pictures on something like Reddit. So what that means is that up until the point where you can't have this active forum community anymore, I think that's the point where it starts becoming, you start becoming popular by other reasons. So if you want to be a well-known figure in League of Legends, you have to be a big streamer, you have to be a professional player, you have to do something else that puts you in the community spotlight, because the forum spotlight no longer exists. So I think that's sort of what makes up this difference between a small and a large community. In a small community, you can discuss things on the forum and you can form a community. In a larger community, you need to be popular by something else. And the other result, of course, that this has is that because the communication lines are less open, right? I'm popular by streaming, but you can't just have a conversation with me and become popular yourself like you could on a forum, because streamers have a conversation via Skype. All of this stuff starts becoming like underground and more private. So I think in that case it becomes more difficult to become this popular community figure. But that's sort of an aside point. It's really just once you're at the point where you need to be like an accomplished player or accomplished something or other to be popular, that's when you end up with this like anonymous, large scale community having like League of Legends and StarCraft.
Do you guys think that there is is there any iteration of a game that's not an MMO that through proper channels and through like a proper social interaction mechanic that any game could foster the same level of community interaction that like a smaller MMO has?
Well, what do you define as an MMO?
What do I define as an MMO? Any
games where players play together, basically.
No, any game that calls itself an MMO, I'll give it that. Firefall, World of Warcraft, SWTOR, Rift, Global Agenda.
If you jump back to Allegiance, because it was so small and because it was like at the forum line, had a very active and very close knit community. At the same time, these people played together, so you can call it an MMO. I think if you're talking,
I refer to
MMO
in the sense of mechanics rather than the sense of rather than the word massively playing a huge role.
So yeah, then definitely. I mean, Allegiance had an active community. I think the forum line is key. Can you have people like coalesce around this core piece of the community? I think the other aspect of that is the community needs something to sort of gather around, and I guess that's a more refined version of saying the forum line, right? Because at some point you can't gather around the forum anymore. So as long as that thing exists, you can have an active community for anything. I mean, there's like small Reddits for nearly any game.
I don't mean an active like if you play an MMO, like let's say you're an MMO player and like that's what you do, right? It doesn't matter what MMO it is. If you only play Firefall, or you only play the Secret World, or you only play Defiance, or you only play WoW, or you only play Rift, or you only play Terra, it doesn't matter. But let's say you're part of that community, like you've got like your guild, right? You got your guild, your friends, and then like people that are in other big guilds that you know because you compete against them or whatever. Or server based. A lot of MMOs are still server based. I know that when I played World of Warcraft, I became very well known on a certain server, right? And people knew me. And then I would move to another server, and it's like no one knew me anymore. But then I would foster that relationship again, and people on the server would know me. They'd just recognize me, whether it was from a pug raid or whatever. I didn't have to have them on my friends list or my guilds list just for somebody to know who I was based on my name. So do you think that it's possible, like for a game, for example, like StarCraft 2, like Blizzard's making a lot of adjustments to their interface and the way that their social connections work to attempt to create like a more in-depth community in a game that's not an MMO. So, like, do you guys think that it would be possible to foster that type of relationship or that type of community that an MMO is associated with on a common basis in a game that's not an MMO? Like, could a League of Legends or a Dota 2 or whatever have that style of connectivity that an MMO has, or is that just like you can't do it because of the anonymity and because of the size and because of the fact that it's match-based, et cetera, et cetera.
In StarCraft, at a high level of StarCraft, people know each other, right?
Well, at a high level in any game, people are going to know each other. Because,
yeah. But I mean, at a low level in an MMO, people don't really know each other either, so it's sort of the same problem. I mean, I think if you have people who connect with each other and play together frequently, they're going to know each other in some way. I don't really think that depends purely on whether you have this MMO infrastructure. Because let's face it, you said yourself you didn't know these people because they were on your friends list. So these MMO features really aren't the thing that makes these communities possible, right? It's just that people are playing together in some way.
Right. Okay. Well, so let's move into kind of like the interactions of pro players and the rest of the community. Like, if you look at any competitive game, any game that's in esports, I don't care if it's StarCraft or League or Counter-Strike or whatever, if you play that game, whether you know it or not, how you play that game is influenced by how the pros play that game, right? Like, so if at a tournament a pro player uses some new build or some new strategy, that trickles down in the community, and eventually, whether you're one of the people that checks the forums or watches streams or watches the tournaments to actually be the first person to see that and to extract it, whether or not you're one of those people, eventually that influences how you play, right? Like, a person who's been playing StarCraft for 2 weeks, their play style is going to start being influenced by stuff that the pros have done without them even knowing it. So, like, I mean, I just think that's cool. I don't really have a direction with what I'm saying, but, like, I think it's cool how, you know, what a pro player does or how tournaments go or whatever in an esports environment trickles down to the lower tier or the casual players naturally, right? It doesn't take any knowledge on the part of the casual player for that influence to occur. And it's kind of like the meta game, right? No pun intended. Of esports, and like that's what happens. It happens in every game. You know, I don't care if it's a MOBA or an RTS or PvP and an MMO or whatever. Like that happens all the time. So like, I don't know. Like, is there a reason for that beyond the fact that just like people see it and it just gets iterated on over and over until the point where it just starts to become standard to where people that aren't even aware that they're being influenced are being influenced? Or is there like, is there something more? Is there some like core, deeper value to that, or is it just surface? That's just because
I think in a game like StarCraft 2, right? It's one-on-one, right? You pick your race, and then sometimes it'll be a mirror match, Zerg versus Zerg, Protoss versus Protoss. So you just try to like what pros will do will influence. However, there are some strategies that the pros do at diamond level that are not going to be executed at silver level. So they really like even developers have noticed that they see kind of like silver level players trying to copy those diamond strats, and they just don't have either the manual dexterity or the know-how. They just need more time. Man. I know, and then you go to diamond and they're a friggin' joke, right? You know, like so it's how certain. I agree with you to a certain extent. Certain strategies can be copied in builds, but other things can be. You know, sometimes just take time to develop for players. For example, I mean, like I know, like in League of Legends, there's people like, you know, you have your standard composition, and other people deviate from that. So people are trying to discover a new meta at different levels, because what may work at an 1800 level game may not work at a 2400 level game. Probably not, right? Because there's going to be a huge. You look at the normal distribution of things, like the 2400 level be are your 0.5, your 99.7% percentile players. That, you know, and then you know you look at your 1600, you're like in your normal standard deviation, so you're like in your 50th percentile. So some strats can work, and I think some strats cannot. But I think people try to emulate the pros because they see it works for them. You know, why can't this work for me? If I implement whatever they do, then I should have more success if my opponent cannot. But that's not always the case, though.
Well, I mean, why not do what the best are doing, right?
Yeah, of course.
Right. So, like, how much... I have, like, a biased view on, like, how I interact with pro players in the games that I play because I'm very active in gaming. Like, it's been a long time since... It's probably been, like, 10 years, honestly, since I played a game that has an esports scene and, like, wasn't aware of it. You know what I mean? And, like, a lot of people are that way now because they're just, like, not huge gamers like I am. So, like, I'd like to get your perspective on, like, how often are people really participating in, like, watching that pro level of stuff, right? Like, how many casual StarCraft 2 players watch Husky and Day 9 and the GSL and the World Tournaments, and you know, how many people who play Smite or League of Legends or whatever, or Dota, watch those tournaments and are, like, aware of those things? Like, I don't know. Like, is there a way to research that? It's something that
Well,
I'm
there
curious
is,
about.
actually. I'm looking at Twitch right now. I see 27,000 League of Legends viewers and about 18.9 thousand StarCraft 2 Heart of the Swarm, at least are watching Twitch right now. So if you think about it, League of Legends has 40 million accounts and 26,000 people are watching streaming.
Right.
Very, very small percentages.
Right.
I think streaming is great. I watch League of Legends at work all the time because I get bored when I have some downtime, throw it up on the iPhone. And I think what they need to do is they need to create more fans. They need to make their streams more appealing to the casual player. Why do I want to watch someone play a game? Why don't I just play it? You know, it's not like we watch pro sports because I'm a big Giants fan. I can't do what Jason Pierre-Paul does on the field when he goes up and kills a quarterback. That would be awesome if I could do that. But I can't. Like, it's not going to happen. So I watch him do it, and I go crazy when he does because I have one of his jerseys, and I love it. So, but for other people, though, it's like, well, they're playing League of Legends. I can play League of Legends. I can just log in and play the same game they are. I may not be at their level, but I think gaming is one of those tough things to sell. It has to be appealing to the spectator. It has to be appealing to the fan because at the end of the day, fans pay bills. You know, and that it all comes down to how the pro community interacts with the regular community, including handling hecklers.
Isn't it the same, though, as a sport? Because, I mean, technically,
Well, it's supposed
you
to
could
be,
just go
but-
buy a football for $12 and go play football.
Yeah, but it's not the same
It's
with
not,
the
no.
crowd cheering, and you know, in video games, everyone uses the same characters, the same animations and whatnot. You know, no one wants to see my out of shape ass on a football field, you know, trying to
Right.
tackle a quarterback.
Right.
Nobody
It's-
cares.
So
Nobody
everyone
cares.
knows they're not good at football, but no one knows they're not good at LoL. So what's the difference? The difference is that football is a physical skill, and you can easily tell if you're executing that skill right. In League of Legends, you can say, "Oh, I don't know,
Elo hell.
I'm silver level, I'm
Elo-
Elo hell, right?"
Elo hell.
Exactly. So I think that's the difference. The other difference, if we're talking about like hecklers and stuff like that, is I think you've probably seen some of the explosions from like people calling sponsors and stuff over the past few years. And the reason that a lot of that is happening is that because pro gamers essentially finance themselves via streaming, you have an like insane window in these people's private lives, right? Because a pro football player you'll see on the field once a week, you'll see him in a professional game. Odds are he doesn't have a microphone, although he might. I think they've been doing that recently.
Not your average player. Maybe your
Exactly.
quarterback and
Yeah,
your
so
middle linebacker.
Once
right?
in a while they
Yeah.
might have a mic, but generally you don't see these people playing personally. It's like if you only saw a League of Legends player once or twice a week in LCS, but that's not how it is because these guys need to make money somehow. And let's face it, esports doesn't pay so well right now. So what you have is these guys having streaming marathons of 8 hours a day, and then at one point they say a swear word or someone messages them with something that was supposed to be private, and boom, people are calling sponsors. Now whether it's like correct that they've been doing that is irrelevant. What the difference is that in football, not every football player is ethically and politically correct 100% of the time. You just aren't watching them when it happens. In League of Legends and in StarCraft and in esports, you're almost always watching the players. And this difference in publicity, I think, is what makes esports both more interesting, because obviously we enjoy watching player streams, but at the same time more difficult and more stressful for players, because they're essentially live for hours upon hours a day.
And you're bound to make a mistake. You're live.
Yeah.
Because, like, again, these streamers, I see Curse, they're streaming all day. You know, that's how they earn their money. They have a lot of
John, I
viewers
saw
coming
that
in.
you saw that guy that fucking got up out of his wheelchair.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, well, but I mean, it's like that
That was
that's something
brutal.
that's something slightly different, right? But I mean, like in some cases, it's like some player messages another player that's a private joke that's kind of tasteless. Because let's face it, most people make tasteless jokes, right? But we do it privately. Well, that other player in that case was streaming, and I'm pretty sure an incident like this actually happened. I think it might have been Stefano, but I'm not completely sure. But the point is, the other player is streaming, receives the private joke live on stream, and then boom, people are threatening to call sponsors, right?
You can't lose Razor, can't lose Cooler Master, right? Because
Exactly.
they supply equipment. I'm sure they're paying, like Curse, I'm sure gets I don't know their deal with that, but they're not putting up their CM Storm for free.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Like,
so
it's
at that
something
point,
in
like,
return.
what happens to these players? That's like this more open, increased community interaction comes with perks, right? As a spectator, it's amazing, but for pro players, it does make community management a lot more difficult than it is for like an NFL team.
I agree, because again, your offensive lineman who made a mistake, who curses out loud, you're not going to hear that.
Yeah.
You hear it on
Or
the
you
field.
do hear about it, but then it's like, oh well, they got fined $15 million, but it doesn't fucking matter because they have $80 million. You know
Yeah, right. I mean, they'll slap the NFL players. They'll slap them a couple $1,000 fines. The big deal is when they get suspended. Now there was an incident where there was that one League of Legends player, right? He was really cursing at players for a while. Sebastian, can you help me out with that? He got banned for a year.
I know who you're talking about.
The League of Legends player? I mean, well, actually, with LCS, a bunch of pro players have been getting banned. Was it I Will Dominate? I think that
It might be. He had a bunch of anti-Semitic remarks, racist remarks.
I Will Dominate actually got banned, and that was a big deal. So I think that might have been him. A lot of people got banned from
Well,
LCS,
I mean, I'm
but
sure
I Will
they got
Dominate
banned
was the
for
biggest.
similar reasons, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're not getting banned because you're being nice.
Yeah,
So,
basically.
so it's kind of like pro players, I understand, but they need to work on some community management, and they need to work on their social skills and being a pro player. Actually, I'll take an event where nobody got banned. Anyone watch the Call of Duty finals in
No.
Hollywood? Okay.
Did I watch the Call of Duty finals? No, sorry.
Hey,
Back to
okay.
that hypocritical post with the background, right?
I know, you're such a hypocrite.
Shut
I'll
up.
give you an example.
Okay, I'm gonna rip that thing. And...
The interview was so, and like I have nothing against Farico. They seem like a really good bunch of really skilled players in Call of Duty. They did that interview. Oh man, it was just awkward moment after awkward.
Okay.
The girl asks a question and the guy gives an answer. It's like, well, it didn't matter anyway. Well, then why the hell did you ask the question? Come on now. Like, what are we doing here? Use your head, please.
Okay, so some guy was filming. I think it was an IEM Call of Duty tournament. I think it might have been ESFI or one of those news sites, and they made a compilation video of like these guys just swearing at each other and trash talking each other. You
I
know
saw
the
that.
kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. So
I
that
saw
thing.
that. Yep.
So
yep.
I'm just bringing this up right now because it is the same deal with the PR. But I think that's an interesting thing because if that happened in League of Legends, a bunch of players would be banned and a bunch of sponsors would be gone. So here we can see community differences again. And that's kind of just before we move on to community differences, because this is a great segment with this whole Call of Duty swearing stuff. Last thing I wanted to mention about the PR stuff, I think the other big difference with like this PR and the swearing, NFL you can slap $1,000 fine on a player and it's fine, right? The difference between the NFL and like League of Legends and esports is that sponsorships are a lot smaller and more specific, but more important at the same time, right? So the NFL is not going to lose a sponsor because some guy was swearing and a bunch of people decided to mail the sponsor.
It's football. What do you want?
Exactly.
It's
In
football.
esports, you have some crazy people who see somebody make some tasteless remark, and then immediately try to ensure that this guy gets kicked off a team, and the team actually has to drop them because otherwise their sponsors are gone, right?
No.
So that kind of thing only happens in esports, and that's because essentially esports is just one giant marketing gig, right? And because it's one giant marketing gig, well, you're not going to have tasteless, racist marketing. So if you're tasteless or racist at any point in time, you're going to have to be dropped. Do you want to say something about that?
I mean, I definitely agree, but let's say if somebody had a racist remark in the NFL or MLB or anything, that would be publicized. That would be a journalist's dream if they got the scoop on that first. That would be huge. And actually, players could be dropped because look at Allen Iverson. Guy has the shittiest attitude in the world. Guess what? You know, you're not playing in the NBA anymore, and he still has talent and ability. Now, that was just over years. He spent his money frivolously. He's he's just I just heard just like a jerk to deal with. Like nobody you could drop 20 points a game. We don't care. We don't want you to be a cancer in our locker room. So I think that socially, in terms of professional sports, there could be revenge effects. But I agree with you, Sam, that the revenge effects are much deeper. Like you said, if let's say Curse, for example, and they're a great bunch of guys. I know I've met Elements a couple of times. A really cool dude. Let's say one of their guys just starts to swear and have anti-Semitic remarks or racist remarks. They got CM Storm. They got a bunch of other companies. Alienware, I believe, is one of them. They're going to be like, guys, we don't want to be around this. Alienware rep comes in, boys, we can't. It's no good. We're pulling our, all the revenue and all the free stuff.
And then Curse dies.
And then it's like you can't fine Curse $1,000. That's like you might as well fine him $1 million. That's a lot of money for an NFL player. Nobody cares. Minimum salary is $500,000 a year. But there are no minimum salaries in esports yet. We're nowhere near that level where we can have standard teams. Everyone builds up their own team right now. Right. So it's really based on the stream revenue, and the Curse. Every esports team has expenses and bills to pay, and if they're going to stream 8 hours a day, you got to make sure that you can pay your rent and eat. So if they lose a sponsor, Now, okay, sponsor drops one team. Now you try to shop other sponsors. They're going to be like, well, you just got dropped. We saw that. Like, why would we may want to jump in because we could jump in for cheap because we could take advantage that you're desperate. Or you'd be like, you know what? No. We don't want to be around that, dude. We don't want our brand associated with the kind of remarks that you make. So it creates a slippery slope.
Yeah. Anyway, so I guess back to the segue I mentioned earlier. So Call of Duty, people swearing the kind of thing that would get sponsors dropped in League of Legends, yet the Call of Duty community seems to be doing fine. In fact, I think there was almost an uproar about that article because people didn't think it was fair to the Call of Duty community. So, community differences. I guess I'm kind of taking the position of moderator almost. So, Tyler, do you have anything to say from a moderation perspective as we get into this?
Well, what do you mean by that? Like in moderation in reference to what specifically?
So, you said earlier we were going to talk about community differences in terms of this broad topic we have here today.
Right.
So I think the interesting thing is the Call of Duty community, as we've so many times said, and the League of Legends, StarCraft, Firefall communities are all very different places for various reasons.
Right.
So I think it's actually extremely interesting that the kind of swearing that would have huge consequences in most other esports communities, or the kind of trash talking and quote-unquote unsportsmanlike conduct, is completely fine in Call of Duty. Have you seen that video?
I have not.
Oh, okay, it's pretty
so
brutal, man.
Yeah, it's insane. So I think we should give a short
brutal.
summary of it. Basically, what happens, it's these Call of Duty games, right? So Call of Duty is, in competitive, it's the search and destroy, right? So
Yeah.
one life, a lot like Counter-Strike used to be, or still is, which means there's a lot of these clutch moments. And basically what'll happen is some guy will get the last kill and the entire team will jump up, look turn towards their opponents and just sort of trash talk. Like, God, you're going down! Right, and all the screaming and the swear words that I'm not going to repeat on this video, all of that just comes out and flies towards the other team. And they just all get up and start shouting at each other, like it's some episode on those daytime talk shows.
Right.
You are not the father, yo.
Exactly. So afterwards, they had an interview with one of the guys, and that's just the way it is, right? It's a heated game, quote unquote heated game, and that's why this is perfectly normal and perfectly fine. Now, League of Legends and StarCraft, you have these kinds of heated games too, but if someone jumped out of their chair in a League of Legends game, that would be completely unacceptable. Well, no, actually, if someone jumped out of their chair and then started swearing at the other team, that would be completely unacceptable.
Can I just be Can I just say, because Call of Duty, no one gives a shit?
Well, they're dumping money into it. And you know what? That's really the only FPS esport that is right out right now. People could disagree with it. They could call it a noob game. You can call it a scrub game. But
talk in terms of money.
Their winning team got $400,000, man. So that's $100,000 each. That's a lot more than all these people.
That's actually something I wanted to mention, because what's happening in esports now is more and more is that developers, rightfully so, see it as a marketing tool for their games. After Riot basically propelled League of Legends to the #1 game in large part using esports. So I think it's kind of unfair to judge the quality of a game and the quality of an esports by the amount of money that's dumped into it. Because I can tell you that most of that money probably came from Activision.
Oh, of course. But here's the thing, though: pro gamers need to collect money to win. So I know one of my buddies, Zoid Bergenstein, love him or hate him, he'll jump from game to game to game, especially in the PC FPS realm because we're pretty much starving for a title. He had to learn several different games to live that pro life. You can't just play enemy territory Wolfenstein forever.
Yeah.
It's a great game, but nobody's playing it anymore. So in terms of pro communities,
when is GoldenEye on the N64 going to be an esport? That's what I want to know.
That is the only esport we ever need. Just saying. Odd job, yo. Odd job. Little bastard running around. No, but in terms of community, how they act and how they behave, Sambasti's right. Call of Duty, you could swear, curse. Even the fighting game community, that poor girl, I don't know if everyone saw that stream, where this guy was just, what's your bra size, what's this, what's your measurements, what's this, how many guys are you going to sleep with after your tournament?
Oh yeah, I heard that was some sort of scandal about that, sexual
harassment. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just now that excludes people.
It's funny because no one ever asks on one of those streams, how long is your penis? No one ever asks that question.
Yeah, well, nobody cares about that. So they harassed this poor girl to the point where she forfeited her last match. and she played it, but she basically just ran into her opponent. To retain her sponsorship, she had to play it. So she just ran her character in and let the person demolish him. She wanted to leave. And that's the type of behavior that sponsors don't want to be around. Like that Call of Duty trash talking, if that gets mainstream, like, you got kids telling their parents, oh, look at this Call of Duty, you can win $1 million. And parents see that video, they'd be like, I don't want my child involved in this. What is this? This is a bunch of white trash kids yelling at each other.
Child, so that's your Call of Duty target audience difference, and I think that's where this trash talking comes in, because you're talking about 13-year-olds on Xbox Live.
Yeah, but these people at these tournaments are not 13 years old.
Yeah,
they're adults, and they should know
but
that.
they're playing on Xbox Live.
Their maturity level is the equivalent of some 13-year-olds.
That I will agree with. So it's just a question of, like, if you want to grow esports in communities, you need to make it inclusive instead of exclusive. Nobody wants to hear the person yelling, get raped, in the box. Like, nobody wants to hear, nobody cares. Like, okay, you went 24-0, yay. Okay, what does that get you? You're gonna go to the local mall and tell some girl, like, yo, man, I just went 24-2 with Black Ops, yo.
No, I mean,
come at me, bro.
This is about PR, right? So tomorrow morning, what's going to be in the papers? 24-0 guy wins Call of Duty Championship, or 24-0 guy wins Call of Duty Championship and tells neighboring girl to get raped.
Yeah, exactly. And nobody wants to hear that. So that's where it comes from community leaders, and actually it comes from Xbox as well, because they can do things to moderate that. They choose not to, because you know what? Everyone's paying, everyone's subscribing, nobody cares. Everyone is paying that $70 a year to play a game that they should be able to play for free. So if you take a look at gaming communities, like take a look at Firefall. Firefall is one of those unique communities, I think, that is, the devs are very transparent. Would you agree, Sam?
I would agree they're transparent. I'm not sure how unique that is.
I think the level that they do it, though, and the way they communicate, the way to bring their game to the, when I went to PAX and we had that community meetup, dude, we were at this 5-star restaurant. They treated us all like gold. It was great. Not every game company does that.
I just can't say it's the most uniquest thing ever because I haven't seen every other game.
But their leadership is important, though, because for the most part, they keep their cool on the forums. However, the revenge effect of transparency is if somebody has a bad day and they post something on the forums, that could be a problem, too. I think I agree. It's not the most unique thing, but I think it's a valuable thing, and that's how you grow community. That's how you grow people that are monetized. Hey, try our game. It's free. Give it a shot. Tell us what you like about it, and more importantly, tell us what you don't like about it so we can get it out of the game. We don't want to have you play something that sucks, you know?
So I'm glad that you say that, because that brings, like, I had something I wanted to say, but I was waiting for the conversation to catch up to it. I've noticed that a lot, right, with games that I've been playing, especially smaller MMOs, and especially games that are coming up in beta that I've been playing. Excuse me. I've noticed that a lot of games are, they have that transparent, the developers are transparent, etc. But I've also noticed that the communities are, like, incredibly well-tempered compared to communities that have been around for a long time. Like, if you look at the WildStar forums and the Firefall forums and the Path of Exile forums and the Defiance forums and all this stuff, everybody is, like, really nice to each other and just like, we know that you're working really hard and we really appreciate everything, whatever, and like everybody's really cool. And then you look at games that are like really big, right? Like WoW, and like people just rage. And so like, is there a point where, because of the size of the community and that increase in anonymity, are we just gonna see these wonderful little communities that start out in betas and stuff and kind of work through like the first year of a game? If that game becomes successful, will we see that dissipate into a League of Legends or World of Warcraft community?
I think the forum line is part of it, but I think a larger part of it is how many 13 or 14-year-olds do you see going on the internet looking up a game that's in beta and then spending hours and hours installing it just so they can have sex with somebody's mother, right? So
he needs it figuratively, John.
Elaborate, please.
Basically, yeah. I said the funny thing. Now I'm going to elaborate on the funny thing. So basically, what I'm saying is, like, the kind of demographic that you're trying to avoid, the people who are going to troll, who are going to immediately rage, who are going to just be the 13-year-old on Xbox Live. Those are sort of the lowest common denominator individuals. But those are not the kind of people who are going to look for a game in beta, research it, pre-order it, go through the trouble of installing the game in beta. No, they're going to walk into GameSpot and buy the best game that the guy recommends for Xbox, and that's going to be whatever's the big hit right now. So when you get to somewhere like League of Legends or Minecraft or something, when the game is popular enough, those 13-year-olds suddenly hear about it and get access to it, and then sort of the community demographic shifts a little bit. And I think that combines with the forum line a little bit to create this sort of, I don't know, less friendly, less tempered, less meshed together community.
I think what'll happen again, so just piggybacking off what Sambasti said, is the larger the community, again, the more potential for entropy there is. Now remember, what people who seek out a game in beta are really the ones that want to stick around. People who come afterwards may be the ones that want to stick around, but most likely they want to try it out. And like you said, Sam, they're probably going to wind up that's where you're going to get most of your trolls. Not the people that are helping to form the community because they want the least amount of entropy as possible. But entropy is going to occur one way or the other. Game, money from a 13-year-old is the same as money from a 30-year-old or a 25-year-old. Doesn't matter. But cash is cash. So that's why. It's important to recognize that the larger community gets, the more potential for that entropy is. And I'm curious to see what happens when Firefall communities continue. It continues to grow daily. I'm curious to see what happens if it does hit that point where it just becomes like a flood of mush, which I hope it doesn't. But I can't say that I'm not going to be surprised if that does happen eventually.
I think I want to talk about the Minecraft community because I said before the show that I talk about the Minecraft community. So the funny thing about the Minecraft community and like demographic-wise is that Minecraft community has a lot of very young people, and I say that in the nicest way possible, right? So you also have a lot of very young people using their parents' credit cards.
A little bit, okay.
You also have a lot of very young people using their parents' credit cards to buy one of these 20-slot servers so they can make their own server for whatever's the big trend right now. I don't know if you guys played Minecraft back when it was still fairly new. I got in near the end of alpha, so the cool thing was kind of seeing this whole thing develop. I never really played it that actively, because it turns out it gets boring after a while, since there's actually nothing to do once you get to a certain point. But what happens is, like, for a while, build servers were all the rage, right? So everyone had a 20-slot build server. And then suddenly, once the player versus player mechanics were implemented, first it was anarchy servers became all the rage, right? So suddenly every 15-year-old is administrating an anarchy server with 20 slots and no rules and nothing going on. And there's a forum section on the Minecraft forums for these server posts, and they just fill up with these identical servers. And after that, of course, it's prison servers were all the rage for a while. And prison servers sort of gets into the part that I want to mention, because the original prison servers was a server called Escapecraft, or something like that. Something craft, something prison crafty, right? And the goal was to, of course, escape the prison, right? So then immediately it becomes a trend and all these clones pop up. So now the system starts breaking down, because anyone can manage an anarchy server. After all, literally the definition of it is not managing it, right? A prison server is actually a lot more challenging to do. Because not only do you have to design the prison, you also have to design the escape attempts, you have to check for bugs, keep everything working, you need plugins and modifications to make it work. So these prison servers start popping up, right? And they end up being really stupid. Like, the goal is to escape the prison, but someone escapes the prison and gets banned because there aren't actually any exits, right? And the only way they got out was by using bugs that the guy hadn't checked for. So this kind of toxic environment starts being created in the Minecraft community. And the only popular Minecrafter that exists are people who are on YouTube, right? Because the Minecraft forums are long past the forum line. Nothing viable has popped up to replace it. And all these little server communities exist, full of these 15-year-olds or 14-year-olds managing these 20-slot servers bought with their parents' credit cards. And people are just bouncing from server to server because all of them suck. And basically, like, this kills the Minecraft community, right? There is no real Minecraft community, so to speak.
Right, if you're part of a Minecraft community, it's small and it's your friends and you're all friends
on
Steam. And
you're part of a server community that lasts for a while and then some admin messes it up and you move on, right?
Kind of reminds me a lot of when I used to play Natural Selection. Kind of like the same thing. People would kind of like bounce from server group to server group. I played well. I went 40-0 in a server. You must be hacking, Firewater. No, I'm not hacking. I've never cheated in my life. No, you got to go. Sorry, we have evidence. Your evidence is bullshit. Your evidence is bullshit. I'm sorry.
The funny thing actually is you mentioned that it's the people you know. Actually, that is the sort of thing that pops up in the Minecraft community. So I actually had the luck of playing on what was basically the first Minecraft PvP server or the first one that used the actual PvP functionality. It was the first server that had like factions, and it sort of started this whole faction trend. So what ended up happening on the server is, as usual, administrative problems. After 7 days, the PvP patch comes out. It's no holds barred warfare, and of course, 3 of the factions collapse, or 2 of the factions collapse immediately. One of them is alive because I don't know. They made an alliance with us, I think, and we were the winning faction, and we were alive because we hid our base so no one could find it. Because Minecraft, that's literally the only reason we're stuck to save, right? We got griefed day 1, which is why we decided to hide. So anyway, what ended up happening is, of course, the server had to be rebooted because one side won it within like 2 days. And then administrative problems started happening, and everything went to hell. So then the server's gone. But the one thing that stuck around is I kept playing with those people because we had won the server together. So why not move on and play together and keep playing together? So that lasted for a little while. But at the same time, it's like, it's the small microcosm of like a few individuals who know each other, who stick together, right? It's not like a Minecraft community. Like those groups, those different small groups never really connect unless they meet each other in warfare on some random faction server.
Right. Okay. Well, we're about the hour mark. The last remarks that I'll make, you know, it'll definitely be interesting now that we have. Yes, John. I'm glad that you typed with your loud ass keyboard just to ask me.
It's my mechanical Cherry MX Reds, baby.
Reds? That's nice. I have browns. Yeah, browns.
Save it for the after show. But yeah, so no, this has been really, really cool. It's going to be interesting. You know, we are just now seeing kind of the first iterations of these major MMOs and major games that have gone through these like really extensive, really community-driven, really transparent betas. Like we're experiencing that right now, right? Like you had PlanetSide 2 was pretty transparent. That game came out. There have been a couple other ones like Defiance. I don't think was that transparent, but you know that's out now. But we're playing Firefall. We're about to, you know, the WildStar beta just started. They're very much like Red 5 in the way that they talk to their community. Excuse me. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see these major games. And you know, like Path of Exile is like Eve to me. Like I don't have time to like learn a hardcore game right now. But that seems like a really cool game. And I haven't really invested time in looking at how the community interacts, but there seems to be a lot of positivity wrapped around that game. So I think it's really going to be interesting to see how that transition from like games like you know, Rift and Terra and SWTOR that had betas and whatever, but were still very heavily directed by developers. You know, we saw how those games did, and we saw how games like what Blizzard makes did. So I think it'll be interesting to start seeing what happens after Firefall's released, what happens after WildStar's released, what happens after these games that have been very transparent actually come out, and it'll be cool to see how the communities develop and see if anything actually changes with having those like beta communities, you know, be a tight knot for the game to launch off of, like a foundation to work off of, rather than just like, here's our game, everybody jump in and figure it out for yourselves. So I think it'll be cool to see like if that makes a transition in the way communities develop, or if really it's just that forum line and that anonymity really like decide whether or not, you know, a game community is going to be one way or the other. But this has been a really fun conversation. We're at about the hour mark. I really enjoyed having you guys on again. This has been a wonderful episode for Metagame. Again, this is the Sambasi. You can follow him at Limelight Esport with a T. There's no S, even though our website has an S because
Twitter character limits.
Twitter character limits. Yeah. So at Limelight Esport, and then always follow John and Alan at FirewaterFX, and of course follow me on Twitter. It's right there at Tovarish Gaming. Thanks so much for tuning in. We should be having episode 5 coming up here next week. Thanks a lot for stopping in, guys, and having this fun little conversation. And we'll see everybody next time.
Cool.
You're absolutely right.
Shots fired.
All right, here we go. Everybody quiet. What's up, everybody?
You fucked up so bad. Put that in the blooper reel.
Welcome everybody to Metagaming. Here hosting it is, what do you call yourself on this show?
The host.
Tovarish? Tyler?
Tyler and Tovarish Gaming.
I'm sorry, I still can't pronounce your name.
It's okay.
Hi, baby.
I just finished
We're going
casting
live
a
in
game
like
of
30
StarCraft,
seconds.
okay? So cut me some slack.
What? Okay.
What did you do?
I just finished filming the first episode of Theorycraft, my other show.
What's that one about?
It's a StarCraft 2 show.
Are you laughing at me?
Oh, really? That's cool. I play StarCraft.
My wife is requesting that I esport this shit. Hold on a sec. There we go.
Gotta get the gunners.
Esporting it. I'm esporting it, baby. And not just my shirt. It does. My wife works in fashion. She would know. All right, so we're recording?
Oh, excuse me.
Are we recording?
No.
Well, we are, but it's all gonna get cut.
Oh, okay. Great. Actually, I'm going to stop esporting. I can't esport it right now. I can't esport it.
All right, here we
Yeah,
go.
this show isn't esport enough.
No. Do you even esport, bro?
Do you even lift? All right, here we go. Here we go.
I honestly, like, I propose to the Melding Cast, I honestly think these kinds of shows should start, like, in the middle of these random conversations we're having right here, and everything should just quiet down when the introduction happens. It makes things seem so long.
No, because when Game Breaker TV does that, I feel like I missed out on the live stream, and I want to punch my fucking computer because I feel like I missed.
Oh,
out on
really?
the funny part.
Because the Pulse does it too, and it looks awesome. I think the Pulse doesn't. The Pulse gets sidetracked a lot, and I really like that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Here.
Well, no, the funny thing is, like, when
I'm gonna
Nine
stop.
does it, I hate it. When the Pulse does it, I don't know. It's just better.
All right. Shut up, Sam. Here we go. All right. Cool.
I'm almost out of water already.
I'm gonna fucking knock you out.
I'm going to internet punch you.
Yeah.
In the fucking teeth. I'm sorry.
All right.